Hello YouTube and welcome to another couch vlog coming at you from my couch in beautiful Sterling, Virginia. Recording from my condo like usual. I hope you all are happy, healthy, sane, having something, anything to do in these trying times. And yeah, let's get started. So what we're gonna start with here is a little bit of bourbon. We've got some Basil Hayden's. Basil Hayden's, I don't know if you're gonna be able to read that or not, but it is what it is. It is a Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey. And looks like it was founded here in 1796. And that's really all it's got to say here. It's artfully aged, whatever the hell that's supposed to mean. And it's bottled at a smooth 80 proof because, you know, 84 proof, 86 proof or whatever, that's not smooth, is it? That's just not smooth. So let's pour ourselves another glass. I already tried it. It was pretty good. I tried it a little bit on the rocks, not on the rocks, but with a single small piece of ice for about a shot here. So let's try another shot. And let's try this one neat and see how it goes. I'm gonna let it sit there for a second and breathe. You can see the label there. I don't know if it's washed out or not. Whatever. It is what it is, guys. So, a couple reasons I'm shooting this. Let's go into it. I haven't been riding since that last video that I made, the Corona ride, that was the last time I've, I guess, even touched a motorcycle, much less ridden one. And that's a bit of a shame, don't you think? I'll go into the reasons why, but yeah, so there hasn't been much content to make. I was thinking about doing a bit of a live stream, but I realized I don't have the equipment to connect my beautiful M6 Mark II to a computer. I'm missing a couple pieces of equipment there that would run me about 140 bucks. And they've been hard to find. There's there's a couple pieces of hardware you need. Well, the main one is like an encoder. It looks like the ones I've seen, they look like USB sticks. And on one end, you got your HDMI port in, and then on the other end, you got a USB 3.0 port. I have not successfully been able to find one for sale. It's sold out on Amazon. It's sold out on Best Buy. It's sold out just about everywhere I looked, and I don't really trust shipping in these times. So I tried to do a live stream with my little Samsung here. I got a Samsung, let me fold it up just to show you. I got a little Samsung laptop, and I figured, hey, you know, I'll use the Samsung laptop. It's got a webcam built in. Well, unfortunately, when I try to stream, the webcam won't turn on for whatever reason. I don't know if there's something with Windows 10 or if I have to run things as administrator or like what. But I couldn't get it to work, and I kind of got frustrated and just didn't do it. Besides, who's going to watch my streams live? I've got like I've got like 50 subscribers, and out of those 50 subscribers, like no one watches my videos anyways. I could probably be the first guy in the world to ride a new bike, or like the first guy in the world to, you know, do something, or I could be interviewing Donald freaking Trump, and I doubt I would get more than like 20 views on my video. So, you know, I don't really think live streaming's for me. But recording the video and sending it to you guys is cool. So as you can see, I've got my little sweet pea here, and I'm not gonna pat her because she'll probably run away. But I got the kitty here, kitty, and then behind me you can see some of my camera stuff. I've used my kitchen table holds my most of my camera and motorcycle gear instead of being used as a kitchen table. I tend to eat behind me here on this table up here, which might be a little messy depending on what you can see. I've got a lit candle. I've got some of the lights on, some of the lights off, trying to get a reasonable lighting situation, which is very difficult when you don't actually have studio lights for yourself. Like over here on my left here, I don't have much of any lighting, so I'm going to be kind of dark, you know, on this half of my face. I'm going to be kind of darker than I am on this half of my face, and there's really, you know, nothing I can do about it besides, you know, moving around or trying different things or purchasing lights. And look, I mean, y'all aren't here for my pretty mug, right? Or even what I have to say. I don't know why you're here for a video like this. Probably because you're bored just like I am. So, what's been going on? I'm watching a lot of YouTube. Of course, I've been catching up with Paul Harrell. If you haven't watched Paul Harrell's rebuttal video, which is about an hour and 10 minutes, an hour and 15 minutes long, that's a great video. That's one of the best YouTube done videos I've ever seen. I don't know or care who he was rebutting to. I watched the video. It was like me, a whiskey-fueled rant, which is kind of hilarious. But at the same time, I commend the guy for giving us this just beautiful talk about Paul Harrell. And one of the great things he said in that video is, you know, it's okay to disagree with people. It's okay to have different opinions. It's okay to even have different experiences, which leads you to different conclusions and all this stuff. But what you don't do is attack someone directly, you know, saying that like, well, this person has a different opinion than me, then everything they've said and all their experiences must be a lie. You don't go ahead and say things like that to people. It's incredibly rude. And yeah, I mean, it really hurts your argument as well. You're dragging yourself down by acting like that. Man, I got to admit, it's pretty warm in my house. It's been doing a very good job holding in heat. And I haven't turned on the aircon because, well, it's still like the beginning of April and it's like freaking almost 60 out. It's like 57 degrees out. I'm gonna turn the aircon in because it's 74 in my house. No thanks. I'll just sweat a little bit. Woo! You know, it's all good. I think this whiskey has opened up itself a little bit here now that it's been sitting. Let's go ahead and give her a little sippy sip, right? I got to admit, this is a damn good whiskey. It is very, very smooth. I noticed that when I drank it on with a little bit of ice where it was nice and chilled and it opened up. But neat. This might be one of the smoothest, if not the smoothest bourbons I've ever had. And it is, I guess it's a blend. Again, it says artfully aged. So what I'm thinking is, I don't see a number. This is certainly not a single malt or a single barrel. This is certainly a blended bourbon whiskey. And they have done a damn good job to create a nice blend here that has I would say above average palates and flavor to it, while also being one of the smoothest alcoholic 40 proof beverages I've ever had in my life. So yeah, congrats. If it's also on sale. I bought it because it was on sale, $37. So this is Basil Hayden. Quite nice. I'm gonna hopefully not drink too much and we'll keep going. So the topic I wanted to have for this video was I wanted to talk about rules, which is weird. I don't know how much I'm going to talk about it. My main thoughts were break the rules. That was my main thought. But if you're going to break the rules, you need to understand the rules first so you can break them properly. So that sounds like a rule, right? It's very confusing to me. And I do this with like motorcycle riding and with photography. These are the two things. So like with motorcycle riding, breaking the rules, there's a whole lot of rules for riding, right? You've obviously got your traffic laws. Those are rules, right? You know, you got your speed limits and lane markings and signs and various rules of the road that everyone obeys. And I think we all know there's a time and a place to break various rules. Like obviously, if you're trying to have some fun and you're a decent rider, you're going to want to speed a little bit. So you're going to want to break the speed rule. If, let's say, disobeying lane markings, you know, if, say, a car is violating your right-of-way in one way or another motorcycle is, another vehicle, just any kind of vehicle, is violating your right-of-way and it's in your lane, maybe you need to go into the opposing traffic or do something, you know, you have to break the rules to keep yourself safe. So there's other rules. How about also the rule that a lot of people like to say, especially riders that are kind of in the intermediate stage, about duck footing, you know, always keep your toes on the pegs, never use the middle of your foot. There's a time and a place for each, right? I mean, that's kind of a silly rule, so I think breaking it is fine. Now, if you're going to be cornering hard and riding aggressively, then having the middle of your foot on the peg is doing yourself a disservice, sure. But if you're just cruising down the highway, there's literally no reason to have the ball of your foot on the peg. You can have your foot wherever the hell you want, and it's really not a big deal. So, I mean, like I said, but understand why you want to have the ball of your foot. So obviously there's two reasons there. The main one is so you can have good leverage on the pegs and put your weight on the pegs, which lowers the center of gravity of the bike and makes it easier to turn. And then the second one is so your foot doesn't get caught on the ground when you're cornering hard. That's pretty important too. So anyways, I also think about like photography rules. We have like the rule of thirds and like the Sunny 16 rule. And then there's rules that your camera, there's rules that like your camera will impose, right? You have like the exposure rules that it says, like it says, oh, your picture's exposed perfectly. Your picture's exposed too high or too low or this and that and the other. And it's like, yeah, understand where that's coming from, but at the same time, understand why you'd want to break these rules. So like with the rule of thirds, that's great and all, but if you want your subject for one reason or another to be dead in the center of the frame, then why not do that? Why not have your subject dead in the center of the frame? If you want to over or underexpose your picture to create mood, then why not do that? And then the same thing with like, say, white balance. If you want to have your picture look as true to real life, then you use, you know, the correct white balance so that, you know, a piece of white paper looks white on your camera given the current lighting conditions, sure. But if you want to, again, impose a certain mood, like say a colder white balance where a piece of white paper would look more blue, that creates kind of like a cold, unnerving feeling. Or if you make it red, or I guess more, I don't know, magenta, I'm not sure what the color is. Just make it the other color, the warm color, and it might make your picture look a little more, you know, inviting or soothing. And so you have all these rules, and the great thing is, if you understand why the rules exist, then you can know when it's appropriate to break them and how to appropriately break them. So that's really all I had to say about that. I think the same thing goes true for music, and I think jazz is a great example, and rock and roll, like, back in the day of music, like I'm talking like 150 years ago or more, there were a lot of rules for playing music, and everything had to line up. You use this chord, then you use that chord, and you progress this way, and you progress that way, and things evolve a certain way, and it all... There was a lot of room for creativity, but at the same time, that creativity had to be very structured, or else your music wouldn't succeed. End of story. And then came along jazz, where all of a sudden now you have blue notes, and you play dissonance, and you do this and that, and then of course rock and roll, and now we have like hip hop and pop, where the rules are just thrown out the window from what we had 150 years ago, and that's what evolution really looks like, is these breaking of these well-defined rules. So what I want to see you guys doing when you ride is first off, understand why we follow certain rules. Like counter steering, that's a pretty big one, right? But then there's times when counter steering doesn't work, right? When you're going slow enough, right? All of a sudden the rule of counter steering doesn't apply anymore. So find that limit for your bike and your weight and everything, because it is different depending on what bike you're on and how much you weigh, where that cutoff is. Then you have braking, right? Use the front brake, use the rear brake. Okay, there's times when the rule of using the front brake doesn't apply, like especially when you want to brake hard off-road. You don't want to use a lot of front brake or any front brake even, because if you go for that front brake, you're done. You're going to fall. So, but at the same time, if you're good, you can use the front brake. In fact, if you're really good, you can lock the front brake and ride it out with a locked front brake. There's plenty of expert riders who can do that too. So it's very interesting. What actually brought me to this topic was I was watching the movie Hitting the Apex, which is a great movie, narrated by Brad Pitt, starring, 6 MotoGP riders, covering the, I guess, 2010 through 2013 seasons, just about, give or take. And it really shows a lot of things. And the reason this makes me bring up rules is because the movie actually not tells you, but it shows you how MotoGP riders break the rules. So at the beginning of the movie, Brad Pitt's giving his little monologue, and one of the things is he says, find the fastest line around the track and then figure out how to go faster. So if you think about it, what he's saying is what MotoGP riders do is find that line that's the best line, the one that everyone agrees is the best, and then find a way to beat the best, to break maybe some of the well-defined rules, or in this case, conventions, and do things better. Another thing he says is there's no one way to ride a MotoGP bike. You have, on one hand, you have Casey Stoner slipping and sliding and doing all kinds of crazy crap. And then on the other hand, you have Jorge Lorenzo riding like he's on rails, and they're literally, depending on the track, they're trading. Like some tracks one's better, some tracks the other's better. Some tracks are equally matched and they're riding within, a tenth of each other. It's pretty intense. And the one that really stuck out to me was Marquez's fastest ever MotoGP crash. I don't know if you realize this on Mugello. Marquez was his first time at Mugello, and the front straight at Mugello is extremely fast, but it's also not quite straight. It goes up, it undulates up and down, and it also kind of has a little bit of a left-hand kink to it, right at the top of a hill. And right when you start going left and cresting the hill, so you go left and then you crest the hill, and right as you crest that hill, that's just about where you want to start getting on the brakes. So being extremely aggressive on the brakes there is, of course, important, but it's also very, very difficult. It makes Mugello one of the more difficult tracks and one of the more dangerous tracks, that particular part, because on a MotoGP bike, I guarantee you no one watching this video could go near the pace that a MotoGP rider is, simply more than anything because they can't use the brakes like a MotoGP rider can. They just can't do it. So the thing about Marquez was he got on the brakes a little too hard. He got on them too aggressively. There is no ABS on a MotoGP bike. And he locked the front tire, and that sent him off into the grass. And what Marc Marquez said is actually interesting. He gave his own explanation, but he basically said, I had to jump off the bike. And that's a rule. I think everyone who rides and is a decent rider knows had the layer down is usually a giant excuse, and that's the last thing you want to do. You want to stay on the bike no matter what. Well, Marquez is a better rider than you, and he crashed going over 200 miles an hour and survived because he laid her down. So he, in that millisecond that he had to make a decision, he decided to break a rule, and it probably saved his life. So that's probably all I have on that topic. I don't really have a conclusion. I mean, I gave you the conclusion as my thesis, really, which is break the rules. but know why you're breaking them. And this is a topic you will find all over YouTube, especially on photography channels, because when you're making photography, there's a few schools of thought. You'll find guys that are very into, obviously, commercial photography, and there's very many different types of commercial photography, right? You have your studio photography, i.e., headshots for celebrities and models. You've got your fashion photography. You've got your product photography. Then you have people that go outside and do stuff. You got your landscape photographers. You have your journalists. And then we can go on and on about journalists, right? You got your sports. You've got current events. You've got long-term assignments and like you got long-term assignments and like heartwarming pieces about I went over to this part of the world and took a bunch of pictures over a few months and this is what I came up with, that kind of thing. And then you got people trying to make fine art photography and those are professional photographers as well. And depending on what you want, I'd say personally I fall somewhere into like the journalistic fine art perspective, where I'm trying to make something that just makes you look at it and go, huh, that's about it. I mean, I'm not a professional photographer. I'm not trying to get paid. I want to make a picture every now and again. Maybe if I can make 1 or 2 pictures a year where you look at them and go, huh, that's interesting. That would be great. Maybe that makes you go, how did he do that? Or why did he do that? Or is that what I think it is? Just something that makes you, that triggers something in your mind more than next, That's all I want. That's all I care about in photography. But if you're going to make something like that triggers the mind and makes you go more than next, well, you have to think first about your audience, right? So for me, my audience is not other photographers. I'm not a professional photographer. I'm not a recognized photographer. Real photographers are not going to be looking at my work. Normal people are going to be looking at my work. So I have to approach this as what would a normal non-photographer person decide is a decent picture. So that's quite difficult. Of course, it's not as difficult as pleasing real photographers, but I think it is still quite difficult. So what mostly pleases non-photographers is hot chicks. Like, let's be honest, women. Good-looking women. But I can't really go that route for various reasons that I'm sure anyone who knows me would understand fully. So I have to find something else. And you know what I mean? So for me, finding something that looks really cool is maybe something that's a little more abstract, something that's a little more artsy-fartsy, So if I'm going to do something like that, I have to understand what the rules are, and then I have to break them in such a way that makes you go, huh, what's going on here, The other side of it is, I like taking pictures to document things, like most people. I think most people take pictures as a way to document their life. And when you're doing that, 9 times out of 10, or I'd say even more like 49 times out of 50, you want to follow the rules. You want your exposure to be correct. You want your white balance to be true to life. You want your framing to lead your eye to the subject of your picture, because that's what you're trying to explain. You're trying to tell like a story. You're not trying to so for like what I'm trying to say is like the pictures I really like to take, the ones that really speak to me aren't pictures that necessarily tell a story, which is breaking a rule, but pictures that convey an emotion. I don't want to tell a story, I want to convey an emotion. So you have to understand, like, what are you trying to accomplish with your picture? Anyways, I'm getting off topic from motorcycles, but I really, like I always say in these videos, these are ways for me to document my life for myself. If you watch this video and you enjoy it, then wonderful. I'm very, very happy, and I'm glad I was able to be a part of your life here for just a few minutes, every once in a while. Or heck, if you're one of the amazing people that watch my 3-hour-long videos and actually enjoy them, then again, I am ecstatic. I'm over the moon about that. But hey, if you watch this video and go, what the hell is the point of this? Well, now I'm telling you the point of this. My audience for these videos is myself. I want to be able to watch this video in 2 or 3 years and go, that's where I was at this point in my life. So that's the thing. Like when I was in college, I took a public speaking course. Well, I took a couple, but the one I took that really stuck with me was one that I took at George Mason, and the theme of that course was very simple theme, and that was consider the audience first. Everything you do should be considering your audience. Because if that, and yes, that is a rule which you can break. Now, if you understand why you're speaking to your audience and why you want to tailor your things to your audience, you can understand that maybe you can pepper things in that don't speak to your audience to create tension. Or maybe you can, every once in a while, create something that doesn't speak to your audience to make something that's just, out of the box. But you have to understand why you're doing it in order to do it correctly. So man, the final thing I want to talk about is my camera. So they finally put 24p onto this camera. So now instead of shooting at 30 FPS, or now instead of shooting these at 1/30th, I'm shooting at 1/25th, f1.4, ISO 100. I'm shooting this video at ISO 100 indoors with just like the lights from my ceiling and the light from outside, which is on a nice gray day. If this was a nice sunny day, I don't even think I could use 1.4. I would have to go down to like f1.8 or f2 or something. So that's very cool, guys. I'm also, of course, I'm using my M6 Mark II. All the equipment here, I got my M6 Mark II with firmware 1.1. I've got the Mi Photo, just most basic standard tripod you can get. And that was it. It's heavy, it's not that good, but it works really well for my needs. And then I've got the Rode microphone Wi-Fi setup. So I've got the lav mic here plugged into the sender, the TX, and then the RX is plugged in via a male 1/8 inch or whatever audio jack into the camera. And that's all I've got going on. It's a pretty simple setup. I mean, if I think about how much this costs. And I got the 16 millimeter, the Sigma. This is the most important part. The Sigma 16 millimeter f1.4 contemporary lens, which is, mwah. That is a beautiful EFM mount lens. Probably my favorite EFM mount lens. Well, I wouldn't say that. I think my favorite EFM mount lens is the macro lens because of how sharp it is and how light it is and just how it works. But it's not great for vlogging because it's a little too narrow. This lens for vlogging is so wide that I can just set the camera anywhere I want. And I can look at this beautiful, look, I can move my hands, I can reach out. You can see my dog, my cat, you can see a candle back there, you can see everything. So one thing I'm going to tell you guys to do, and this is a bit of a second topic, is find something to do, right? I like making videos. I like listening to music. I've got something like 70 vinyl records. I'm about to put on a record. You can't see it. It's literally right behind the leg of the tripod there is my record player, and that's got Rays of Darkness by Mono just waiting to be queued up as soon as I'm done with this. So I'm pretty excited, guys. Anyways, I don't want to make this too long here. I'm sure it's already gone long enough. Ugh. I'm going to finish this drink. Let's finish this drink up and see what a big gulp seems like. Good sip. A bigger gulp is not too bad. I'm thinking if I chug the rest of this, it's going to make me wince. And I was... I was right. Woo! Woo! I think I poured about 2 shots into that glass. I'm not good at taking shots, guys. I'm like crying now, guys. Oh. Anyways, as always, stay safe and think about your riding. But of course, if you're not riding, think about having some fun, okay? Think about doing something that you normally wouldn't do, or picking up an old hobby, doing something that you haven't done in a while. Anyways, guys, take care.